That concludes the service. Well, that and the cell phone ringing. What happens to your surrender when God has the audacity to leave a cell phone turned on? Answer it out loud. Let's call it true confessions. What happens to your peace and presence and joy and om, om, om? Let it go, let it go. Ring. How dare you? Can't you read? Can't you hear Reverend Bob? Don't you know this is God's house? Just like that. Just that quick. So, if you have a pulse, you have some work to do. That's how you know. So you think you get a little spiritual enlightenment? Let a cell phone ring. If you really think you get a little enlightenment, go spend a weekend with your family. You think you get a little enlightenment, just go participate in the pitch-in. Somebody will cross you from here to there. There'll be something in that food you just can't bear. Somebody wouldn't have prepared their dish according to your wants and needs. Someone didn't consult you about your gluten tolerance. So what happens to our surrender? What happens to your presence when you don't get what you want? From bliss to what? In 0.0 seconds. Bliss to stress. Heaven to hell. Peace to pain. That quick. So what are we going to do? What are you going to do understanding the allure of this thing, the power of this thing, the power of these patterns to take us from heaven to hell just like that, to take us from peace to pain just like that? What are we to do? So what caused your stress when the cell phone, if you heard a cell phone ring, raise your hand. The rest of you were spared from it. You must have been enlightened enough not to need it. So what happens in you when you don't get what you want? Say it out loud. Hurt. Pitiful. Pissed. Frustrated. Irritated. Upset. Victimized. Indignant. Righteous. So, where did you get that you were going to get what you wanted? Where'd you get that? So that's like having a 3-year-old run your show. A 4-year-old run your show. That's still believing in the illusion and the delusion of I'm going to get what I want. Instead of maturing, awakening into, no, I won't get what I want. Sometimes I'll get what I want, and sometimes I won't. What am I going to do in between? That's the spiritual journey. When I get what I want, glory be. When I don't get what I want, pitiful me. Instead of, what if it was neither? What if it was like watching that wanting just come and go? Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. Just like the wind blows. If I could just watch it like the wind. Wind comes, wind goes. Clouds arise, clouds pass. Wanting arises, wanting passes. It happens, it doesn't. It comes true, it doesn't. Both and. Not one or the other. Both and. Now, what would this do for you to change your relationship that would allow the both and? And so answer that out loud. Who would you be if you had integrated, if you were mature, emotionally mature, spiritually mature? If you had fully integrated the both and? Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. So what? Peace. What else? Who would you be if you had this integrated? Grateful, balanced, centered, empowered, with choices. Excited, inspired, on solid ground. There's a real possibility here. A real possibility. So let's imagine now someone does something to you, like they're unkind to you. What happens inside of you the minute you believe they're unkind? Basic Unity 101. The thought you have creates your experience. You have a thought they're unkind, you believe it, you will experience unkindness. You created that by believing a thought you didn't circuit break. One thought arises. If you don't circuit break the thought, if you don't question the thought, catch the thought, observe the thought, then you're under the influence of the thought. You're drunk on thinking. So then a thought arises, they're unkind. You don't question the thought. You have an experience of what? What happens inside of you when you believe the thought, they're unkind to me? Separation. Judgment. Resentment. Get unsafe. Got to protect myself, defend myself. Get defensive. Teach them a lesson. Teach them a lesson in kindness. It gets funnier and funnier. In the name of spirituality, by the way. So I become unkind the minute I believe the thought that they're unkind. I am that. So who did that to me? Who put me in hell? Who put me in stress? Altogether, me. Me, 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 me. So hold up your little finger that's very unique, only one fingerprint in the whole world like yours, and point it right at yourself and say, me. That was me that did that. If there is a me, that's another class, another Sunday. But for today, we're believing there's a me. Let's look at the consequences of that. So now imagine, go back to the unkindness. Now imagine somebody that you are rock solid clear about how unkind they are. And you've got the proof. Go there. Go to that person. You see how their face has already come into you? Like, don't you just hate that? Like some of them are in the grave, but they're still here. Like, what a deal. Ugh. So whoever's unkind to you, there they are. You could even smell them if you stood there long enough. They're there. The unkindness is there. How would you react to them doing exactly what they're doing? All the unkindness in the same situation, same snarly look, same voice, same face. Who would you be in that situation if you weren't believing a thought that they are unkind? Forgiving? Say it again. Honest, honey. Open, compassionate, understanding, kind. I'd be kind. Isn't that what you're wanting them to be? So you would be a teacher of kindness by being kindness, not lecturing us about kindness. Kindness can't be taught. Kindness can be caught. So I'd have an experience of kindness coming from the inside of me that possibly somebody else could catch. Possibly somebody else could catch. So do you want to create a world of defensiveness, righteousness, indignation, separation, condemnation, judgment? Anybody here want that world? Can you see that we're still creating it? While we claim we want a world of understanding, compassion, oneness, forgiveness, understanding, acceptance, surrender, and letting go. Okay. So they're unkind. I treat them unkindly the minute I think they're unkind. So where do I need to work on this? Now, some of you still think you can change them. Let's have a healing this morning. So reach around to anybody you can touch. Just look around, and if you can reach them, reach out and put your hand on their head and say, heal. Heal. Now, put your hand on your own head and say, heal, 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 heal. That there's nothing out there to change. That is impossible to do. Have you noticed? So the one place in the world I have any control, the one place in the world I can change anything is, this is good news. It's a full-time job for me. So then I know to work here. And the minute I'm triggered out there, wonderful. Where am I going to work? Here. So hi-ho, back to work I go. It's a one-stop shop. So back to here. So now let's get into kind of the unkindness is the tip of an iceberg. So under they're unkind to me is all sorts of underbeliefs, core beliefs that's been handed down for 2,000 years throughout the whole phenomena of humanity that we're stuck in if we don't unstick ourselves. So you heard your mission and vision of Unity of Indianapolis. My vision is spiritual liberation. To live a life in spirit, inspirited as co-inspirators. My mission is to serve those who serve, which is why I do the things I do. It's to live out that mission. It is also includes then practical things like getting this message out into the world. People that would never come through these doors, people that do not relate to the name, to the branding, things like that. So how to do those things. And here are some of the ways I do it. And it is to record talks like this and put them on CDs. It looks like a DVD. It's not. It's 4 CDs. Martha Creek, talking. So if this message you've heard this morning is resonant with you, it's kind of even aggravated you in some way, that's a good sign. Resistance is such a good sign. You know you're really onto something big if the fear mind is resisting it. If it's telling you, check out here quick, you know not to. They're out there on a table. They're the opposite of copyrighted. Do you know what that means? That means take them with you and duplicate them. Give them away. Leave them on tables. Leave them in doctor's office. Sling them out the window in neighborhoods. Give them to people you don't like. What I'm asking you, however, is if you take one of these, you join me as a co-inspirator. That you join the mission to get our message out into the world. And then leave a donation of something of yours out there on that table where they are, because I use those donations to go make more of them to haul them around to the next place. That's how that works. You also will find a little book out here that's been donated and given to you through the Byron Katie International Organization. That is the keys to liberation. Don't believe me. Because until you test this for yourself, it's just Martha Creek, blah, blah, blah. So until you practice this, until you test this for yourself, and we're going to be over here at this afternoon after your pitch in, that just an hour south of here we call a potluck. After that, in your community meeting, your time of sharing and questioning and celebrating what you've got going on here, then we'll sit over there for a couple of hours and liberate ourselves. So if you have not suffered enough, don't stay. This is only for people who have suffered the right amount. That's over it, so to speak, and that has a glimpse into another possibility for their life besides living as in bondage and hostage to these unquestioned beliefs and thoughts and temptations and allure that we have out of our patterned ways of being. Here's a little excerpt from the book. What is, is. What is, is. Take that in just for a minute. You don't have to like it. Just what would it be if you looked upon a thing and called it what it is instead of giving it a meaning? So for example, if you go to leave and your car has a flat tire, what are you going to call it? A flat tire. That's spiritual liberation. Now, if you call it awful, what do you experience? Awfulness. If you call it terrible, what do you experience? You call it unfortunate, what are you going to experience? Misfortune. So who created that for you? Who created your reality of awfulness, terribleness, misfortune? Who did that? This is great news. What would it be like if you looked upon it and called it a flat tire? How would you experience it then? Neutral. Let's call it sane. I'd be sane enough to go, oh, the tire is deflated. I prefer an inflated tire. What can I do? Look for a jack. Look for a pump. Look for AAA. Look for a cell phone. Look for somebody headed toward me that can do more about a tire than I can. Your mind would be open, collaborative, resourceful, empowered, aware, counting your blessings. the blessing of a flat tire and all the resources I have to meet that flat tire. That's another Sunday. That's another workshop. The only time we suffer is when we believe a thought that argues with what is. For example, cell phones shouldn't ring in church. Like that. What's the reality of it? Do they? What happens to you when you're believing a thought they shouldn't and it rings? What happens in you when you believe the thought it shouldn't ring and it does? You suffer irritation. So believing the thought is what caused it, not the cell phone. More good news. That means after today, nobody can be the matter with you. Now, this will really irritate some of you. When the mind is perfectly clear, what is what is. By the way, you don't have to like it. You sure don't have to love it. And I don't speak in terms of loving what is much, although that's the name of the textbook. I didn't write it. If I had have written it, I would have called it Loving What Sucks. What I call it is the work. The work. So you don't have to like what is, you don't have to love what is. But until you accept what is, you don't have much of a life. You lived in a pattern, reactive, knee-jerk, pitiful, powerless, victimized way, which is the strongest of all the archetypes, this archetype of a victim, of something is happening to me. If you want reality to be different than it is, you might as well try to teach a cat to bark. You can try and 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 try to try to try to try to try to teach a cat to bark. Then give them a book on barking. Take them to a workshop on barking. And then you'll look down at the cat, and the cat will say what? We've had a healing. Spiritual enlightenment. Wanting reality to be different than it is hopeless. And what would it be if you saw God as reality? Reality is what is, and God is what is. Both and. The unkindness and the kindness. The caring and the uncaring. So if you believe there's one power and one presence in all the universe and in my life, it's not one or the other. It's both and. So if you knew that God is in the unkindness, how would you be with the unkindness? Those of you that were at the women's retreat, can you stand up? These are 54 women that spent 3 days letting me torture them. And look, they lived through it. They're smiling. It's wonderful. So I'd love you to thank you for being there. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for leading the way. This is a fulfillment of my mission to serve those who serve. These are the people that are serving you as well. Thank you again for doing that. I also brought some photos of the parts of the weekend we can talk about are out on the table for those of you that came. Go out there and sort through them and take any of them that you want. And then those of you that want a glimpse of what they had, what they experienced, ask them directly what it was like and what the investment of that weekend was like for them. And to thank your leaders, Bob and Carla, for living the way they do, to be open-minded enough to have a guest speaker up here, to make a provision for a women's retreat, to do whatever it took to make that happen. Carla was there working with the rest of us the whole weekend too. So it speaks of enlightened leadership. And to remember that these are human beings. They put their britches on just like you do. They've got a fear mind to deal with also. They've got their own patterns to deal with. So if you're looking to them as something besides a human being, you will sabotage yourself. So they're here to minister to you in every way they can, every way they know how to. And they're here to be ministered to by you in every way that you know how to. And that's what human beings do. So the role they're in here as senior leaders is just a role. Then there's role issues, and there's roles to discuss and roles to discern and things like that. And to the degree that you remember, we're human beings having human being experiences and the full phenomenon of human beingness, then we'll be with each other differently. And I pray and know that for you. It's an honor and a deep privilege to come back here, to be asked to come, and for me to have it open on my space. I'm booked, some of those that you worked here with me all those years ago, I'm booked 1.5 years in advance for the last 6 years in ministries like yours that are thriving, that are cooking on all 4 burners, that are being and expressing our principles out in the world. So you are my fulfillment of my own mission and vision. So I don't take it for granted that you're here. And you're the ones. We are the ones that can do this. If somebody else could, they'd be in these seats. So get a sense as we close of what it would be like to be integrated. And there's one power and one presence in all the world. It is breathing me. It is expressing me. And it is calling me home to myself. It is inviting me to break out of these patterns. It is inspiring me to see a different way of being, a radical different way of being in the world. And that I have a point of choice when I do. What would it be like to live that out? Pain or peace? Presence or patterns? Stress or bliss? God bless you. I love you and cannot help it. And I'll be out there to hug you, answer questions, and to support you in any way I can. And my name is Martha Creek, and that's the website, Martha Creek. So that's how you can find where workshops are. If you want personal mentoring or coaching or something, it's available. Like, get in touch with me that way. Anywhere in the world that I can serve you. Knowing that I will mentor you and I will torment you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Martha. It is now time for our tithes and offerings. And for over 100 years now, Unity of Indianapolis has been a place, a positive path for spiritual living. So if you donate on the website, just kind of hold whatever you donate on unityofindy.com in mind. If you're going to be giving cash or checks, just hold that in your hand and open your heart and pour love into it. Outpicture the experience you want to be experiencing. One of bliss, one of love, one of abundance. Knowing that whatever we give unconditionally and in love comes back to us multiplied at least 100 times. And then let's say the affirmation on the screen together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, all that I receive, and I am grateful.
What a treat to be here today. Thank you, Martha. Yeah, I've been in the nights, been in the darkness for too long. Bringing in the lights, bringing in the night, not the way of a song. It's the love I give turns to happiness. Bringing in the joy, bringing in the rain, bringing in the bliss. Yeah, bringing in the nights, been in the darkness for too long. Bringing in the lights, bringing in the night, not the way of a song. It's the love turns to happiness, bringing in the joy, bringing in the night, bringing in the bliss, and bringing in the nights, been in the darkness for too long, bringing in the light, bringing in the light, not the way of a song. It's the love I give turns to happiness, bringing in the joy, bringing in the night, bringing in the bliss. I'm dropping the word, I'm dropping the shame, I'm dropping the guilt, I'm dropping the blame, I'm dropping the walls, I'm dropping the windows, dropping the doors. I'm dropping who's wrong, I'm dropping who's right, I'm dropping my foot all up in a fight. I'm dropping the roof, I'm dropping the porch, I'm dropping the floors. And I'm bringing in the nights, been in the darkness for too long. Bringing in the nights, bringing in the night, not the way of a song. It's the love I give turns to happiness, bringing in the joy, bringing in the night, bringing in the bliss. I'm dropping the plan, I'm dropping the plot, I'm return to Unity of Indianapolis. Thank you. I'm going to do something that's called looping, so I'll be recording and adding tracks as I go. And this song is called